Live from the station on your side, this is WAVY News 10.
And as long as terrorists and dictators plot against our lives and our liberty, they will be opposed by the United States Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, and Marines.
Minute by minute, our world changed 1 year ago today. Observances to pay tribute to those we lost.
And today from our president, an assurance justice will prevail. Good afternoon and welcome to WAVY News 10 Midday. I'm Don Roberts.
And I'm Carolyn Castleberry. Certainly a day filled with emotion, from the pain of remembering the terror that struck and those we lost exactly 1 year ago today, to anger and a reminder of injustice done against America. All across our country, observances of the events that changed our world and gave us all a renewed sense of purpose. We have extensive 10 on your side team coverage of today's observances in New York, at the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. WAVY News 10's Andy Fox is at Arlington, Virginia, outside of the Pentagon, and in New York at Ground Zero, 10 on your side's Nicole Livas. But let's begin with today's ceremonies in New York. Across the river, with a view of the forever changed New York City skyline, is WAVY News 10's Les Smith. Les?
Don and Carolyn, as expected, this was an enormously painful, deeply emotional day for the citizens of New York. They mourned their dead in a huge public ceremony, an enormous memorial at Ground Zero. But beyond that, this was an even bigger step toward healing. It started before dawn, a city in mourning.
Again today, we are a nation that mourns. Again today, we take into our hearts and minds those who perished on this site 1 year ago.
At 8:46, the moment the first jet slammed into the World Trade Center, a moment of silence, deep with meaning.
Fourscore and 7 years ago,
Governor George Pataki read Lincoln's words from Gettysburg, echoing from a Civil War battlefield to the canyon of Lower Manhattan.
we are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live.
Edelmiro Abad.
And then the names, more than 2,800 of our fellow Americans who died here.
Lawrence Christopher Abel.
At 10:29, another moment of silence. It was at that moment that the second tower collapsed. And the reading of the names continued well on beyond that. This was a New York ceremony, but it's going to take on a little bit more of a national perspective later today. President Bush will arrive for a wreath-laying ceremony, and then later tonight, at the Statue of Liberty, he'll give what's billed as a very patriotic speech. So this day of mourning may be over, at least in part for New York. Remembrance has much farther to go. Don, Carolyn?
Les Smith in Liberty Park, New Jersey. Les will be checking back with you.
And here in Hampton Roads, as many of us watch this morning's ceremonies on television, know this as well, that many of your neighbors are in New York City watching the observances firsthand. 10 on your side team coverage continues at Ground Zero with WAVY News 10's Nicole Livas. Nicole.
Good afternoon, Carolyn. Yes, we know for sure we have 6 Norfolk police officers who are down there, part of the crowd for the memorial services today. We could take a look down there. Some folks are leaving the site, the circle of hope they have there in the middle. Others still heading down that way. Also, a local family who lost a loved one in the World Trade Center from Norfolk. They came up here. They said they would be at the ceremony this morning. It's a sunny and windy day in New York City, and somber, as Les said, but a time of remembrance. It's been a week of remembrance. In fact, those local Norfolk police officers, we were the only crew with them as they went back to Ground Zero for the first time 1 year later. 1 year later, a different sight than on September 11th, 2001. The tower's gone, a gaping hole left in the earth. Norfolk police officers who rushed up here to help out, now back to remember.
Just can't believe it. Just can't believe the whole thing. You hardly recognize the place. It doesn't look anything like it did before. The way it looked before and the way it looks now.
all these buildings, I mean, the level of where the debris was, I mean, where we're standing was nothing. This is ground we're standing on. We were standing on, you know, another foot or two higher of nothing but rubble.
This NYPD officer almost ran into the danger.
And we started getting out in the van to go into the building, and he just yelled at us to get out of there because another plane was coming in. We just jumped in the van. If it wasn't for him, I mean, you never know what happened. So.
His precinct lost 2 of the 23 NYPD officers who died in the attack. He says support from Norfolk police and from around the world has made a difference.
The guys from Norfolk especially have been great. We really appreciate them coming up and helping us out up here. I mean, especially around September 11th, if all these officers from other places didn't come up and give us a hand, a lot of guys wouldn't have been able to get off. We would have been just working straight through.
You could definitely see the solidarity here, the police officers, the firefighters working together, coming together on this day of remembrance. Coming up, we'll take you to a nearby fire station that lost 11 of its brothers in the World Trade Center attacks. We're live in New York. Nicole Livas, WAVY News 10.
All right, we'll see you a little bit later today. Thanks a lot, Nicole. The devastation of the attacks 1 year ago touched Virginia soil.
We go now to the Pentagon, where today, again, the move was both mournful and defiant. WAVY News 10's Andy Fox is standing by to continue our team coverage as America remembers. Andy?
Yeah, Don, you know, everyone says that on September 11th, America lost her innocence. But at this memorial service, it was emphasized that America did not lose her innocence. America found some heroes. Heroes were born on September 11th. And this memorial service was full of patriotism. President Bush was here. President Bush hit hard the importance of military. At one point he said, America is counting on our military and our confidence is well placed. Bush said the enemy that struck us is determined and they are resourceful. They will not be stopped by a sense of decency or a hint of conscience, but they will be stopped.
And as long as terrorists and dictators plot against our lives and our liberty, they will be opposed by the United States Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, and Marines.
Everyone I spoke with gave the president very high marks for his words, and they believed those words. And there was a great sense after the memorial service that the war on terrorism is moving forward and that in the end we will prevail. Now, you still might see a whole bunch of people behind me. They're going to be having a worker appreciation ceremony. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, will be here to praise the people who put this Pentagon back together. They did it in record time, and they came in under budget, and they were even able to match up the limestone of where American Airlines Flight 77 crashed through the Pentagon. And, Don, coming up tonight in our later broadcast, we're going to have an interview with a guy that was in there, survived. He was badly burned, but he lived to tell his story, and he'll tell it to us tonight. Don, back to you.
And the emotions are still running high with many folks who were directly or indirectly affected by this, but do you get a sense that people are ready to move on from here?
Well, people are willing and ready to move on, but not the people who lost someone here. I asked someone this question, and we always say, you know, it could have been worse. And the lady pointed out to us, to Jeff Myers and to me, that's not true. Not when you lost someone that meant so much to you. It's never over for someone like that, and it could never be worse. It was as bad as it could get for him. We'll have that story, too. 2 sisters, both of them in the Pentagon. One lived, one died. Their story coming up later on WAVY News 10, 5, 5:30, and 6. Don, back to you. And we're also during our special broadcast this afternoon.
All right, Andy Fox at the Pentagon. Thanks.
Meantime, thousands have gathered in Shanksville, Pennsylvania to honor those who gave their lives on United Air Flight 93. A bell tolled there 40 times today, once for each victim. The bell was accompanied by the reading of each victim's name, leading up to the moment, 10:06 a.m. Eastern Time, when the plane crashed. Homeland Security Director Tom Ridge spoke at the service, and President Bush will meet in private with the victims' families later today. Several ceremonies are scheduled locally to commemorate the tragedy as well. Our team coverage continues now with WAVY News 10's Rona Williams. She's at Town Point Park in Norfolk, where one such ceremony started early this morning and will continue for several hours. Rona.
That's right, Carolyn. Good afternoon. A crowd of several hundred gathered here at Town Point Park. As you can see, the stage is clear and the crowd has dispersed, but this morning's ceremony was very somber, and it was also a very spiritual commemoration. And the sounds of bagpipes were just one of many moving moments at today's ceremony. It drew a crowd of local firefighters, police officers, military personnel, and people who just wanted to take time to reflect and honor the thousands of men and women who were killed 1 year ago today. There weren't a lot of tears. It was a very peaceful ceremony. We spoke with a Houston firefighter who's in Hampton Roads for medical treatment. He lost a cousin last September 11th. He was a New York firefighter who lost his life trying to save others in the World Trade Center's North Tower.
Firefighting's in my family, and he's a big inspiration to me. And I carry this picture, I carry his bracelet, and I have a picture of his 3 small children he left behind. I carry with me everywhere I go.
And you can see behind me there was a wreath laid at the end of the ceremony. And I also want to point out that Town Point Park is open until 10:30 tomorrow morning, where folks can come out. There's a vigil that will be held until tomorrow morning. Nothing scheduled, but if anyone wants to come out, lay flowers or just lay cards, Town Point Park is open for those who want to do that. Carolyn.
All right, thanks a lot, Rona.
On the peninsula, people remember those lost in the attacks. Ceremonies at Fort Monroe and Hampton feature 2 men who survived the Pentagon attack. The WAVY News 10's Lowell Melzer has been there all morning. He's at Continental Park with more. Lowell?
Yeah, Don, we had several thousand people show up here to Continental Park on Fort Monroe. You had everyone from all branches of the military. You had civilians, police officers, firemen, you name it. They were here to show a spectacular display of patriotism, a chance to remember and to reflect. It was hard to find a dry eye at Centennial Park here on Fort Monroe. Nobody held back emotions as the U.S. Continental Army Band played songs of patriotism to video of last year's horror. But perhaps the most inspiring moments came as Navy Commander Craig Powell, who was 1 floor above where that plane hit the Pentagon, told those here in attendance how he explained to his 7-year-old son that America had been attacked.
Terrorists, Connor, are not freedom fighters. They're actually trying to take your freedom away by scaring you. Do not fear and be free. I feel safe because I know my military, my government, my country has done everything, and I mean everything, possible to keep my family safe, to defeat terrorism, and for me to be free.
There were so many emotions here, just a lot of tears, a lot of reflection, as we said, a lot of speakers as well. Another guy, an Army commander who was inside of the Pentagon, only 75 yards away from where the plane hit. We have his story, and we'll bring it to you in our later newscast. Don.
Lowell Melzer at Fort Monroe and Hampton, thanks.
On this day, as America remembers, America also continues to strike back in the war on terror overseas. And this midday, American soldiers on the front lines of the war on terror are on high alert. Soldiers at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan have been told to be aware of their surroundings and to go about their jobs in a safe manner. A lone gunman opened fire at a perimeter tower at the base just this morning. American soldiers returned fire. None of them were hurt. Officials say the gunman was wounded but ended up getting away. Meantime, of course, the search for Osama bin Laden continues.
Meantime, elsewhere in the world, tight security controls remain in place today in other countries. U.S. embassies and foreign airports remain on high alert this midday. In Germany, police and security authorities have been placed on increased security patrol. Same goes for Italy and airports there, and so far no major problems are being reported. Now back here in America, in Homeland Security, the nation remains at terror alert level orange, which means there is a continued high danger risk of an attack. Military bases are a potential target today as America remembers. While the threat is mostly aimed overseas, locally precautions are being taken, security being heightened at bases here.
WAVY News 10's military reporter Patty Culhane is on board the USS Wasp with more on that. Patty.
Carolyn, you know, as you drive around the base, although security is increased, you don't really get a feeling that it's a tense place. It's more sadness that is all around the base today. Now, you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody here not affected by September 11th. Many sailors will tell you the stories of friends or family members lost in the attacks on New York and in Washington. But unlike most of the country, they were able to turn their grief and anger into action. Here on the amphibious ship, the USS Wasp, this morning, this flag created in the American Revolution went up on all Navy ships. The message, "Don't tread on me." It'll stay here until the end of the war on terrorism. A moment of silence marked the moment of the terror attacks. Sailors reminded once again of that terrible, tragic day.
And that sense of security that you feel when you're in your town, in your home, that I lost it that day. And I started thinking about how I could help.
Now, that sailor lived in New York. He'd been out of the Navy for 13 years. He started asking himself, how can I help? And he re-enlisted. Now, the attack affected many of the sailors, including Chief Select Troy Wheeler. He was on the USS Bella Gulf the day of the attacks. They were sent up to New York. What was it like sitting off the coast that day?
A lot of thoughts go through your mind. You have your job to do. We had just finished our deployment training cycle, so we were ready to do anything. But your thoughts go to the country and New York and your families.
And you didn't know if you were going to be able to come back. You guys were about a week away from deployment to the Middle East. What was that like, not knowing? What did you say to your family and your girlfriend?
That's correct. We didn't know. And for us sailors, we understand that perhaps more than our families do. And we just had to tell them, I don't know. I don't know if we're coming back before deployment or if we're going straight for deployment.
Thank you very much, Chief Select Wheeler. I appreciate that. But again, the mood on the military base today is one of sadness. There will be moments of silence and memorials. And again, the flags are flying on all of the ships, warning terrorists, don't tread on me. Don?
Patty Colhane at Norfolk Naval Base, thanks.
The search continues at this hour for a missing Navy surveillance plane. The Navy last reports contact with the S-3B Viking around 9:30 last night. The jet, similar to the one on your screen, was on a routine training mission with the USS Harry S. Truman off of Puerto Rico. The S-3B is based out of Jacksonville, Florida. No word yet on how many crew members were on board. We will continue to follow the story, bring you any new developments just as soon as they become available.
School children across Hampton Roads took time out today to remember the victims of the terror attacks. Some 400 students at SeaTac Elementary in Virginia Beach dressed in red, white, and blue for a special ceremony. Guests from the Navy, police, and fire departments were also on hand for the program.
So we have come to remember them, to give them glory and honor for their courage and bravery. We remember their families. We pray that the families of those lost can get through today without too much pain.
Students also planted 2 trees in front of the school to remember the terror attack victims. Local gatherings like those in Norfolk and a number of area churches aren't the only places people pause to reflect and pray this morning.
And take a look from Chopper 10's perspective on this display of patriotism and tribute. Radio station FM 99 organized this living flag gathering at Mount Trashmore just this morning. The tribute took place at 8:46, the time the first plane hit at the World Trade Center.
And at the Virginia Beach ocean front, another large tribute on this day of remembering. Chopper 10 pictures now of a mural displayed on the side of a hotel off Pacific Avenue between 5th and 6th Streets.
Also this morning, Chopper 10 captured a solemn moment on the USS Cole Memorial. It's at Naval Station Norfolk near the edge of Willoughby Bay. Here we found sailors like this one, remembering the victims of the terrorist bombing of the Cole and no doubt reflecting on today's anniversary of the attacks. We apologize for not bringing up that soldier. And again, the attacks allegedly by the same Al-Qaeda terrorist network.
WAVY News 10's coverage of America Remembers continues throughout the day.
We'll have a special report starting at 4 this afternoon covering memorial services in New York, the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. Then watch our continuing coverage this evening from 5 to 6:30. Then see amazing stories of hope and triumph in a special report at 7:30.
Also, election news. And when you think of elections in Florida, what's the first thing that comes to mind?